Hello and welcome to another episode of the Maverick Mystic Arts podcast. We'll be continuing with our exploration of Step 9, Franz Barden's initiation into Hermetics. This particular section of Step 9 looks at the magic mirror. So there's a number of purposes that a use of the tool of a mirror can serve. However, it's important always to remember that the tool is merely that, right? No matter how advanced the hammer is, there's the person doing the hammering. There's the skill behind it. There's the capability and the cultivation behind the tool. So everything that you do using a mirror can be done without. And that's a really, really important distinction to make. So how you go about moving away from the mirror, there's a number of different ways you can do that. The purpose of this is to discuss using the mirror. So let's look at the values in using the mirror itself. Firstly, what it does is it can create a type of a safety mechanism because in a sense it distances the practicer from what they're doing. So it creates a type of separation. Okay, and there can be some value in this in that you develop a subconscious habit of separating yourself from the ritual after. You do the ritual or the meditation in the mirror, using the mirror, and then you finish it and it consolidates in and around the mirror, all the energy of that practice, and then you go your separate ways. So because that becomes a subconscious habit, it can make it easier for us to practice without having these crossovers where you keep the practice open, where you keep the energy open, and because you might not be fully absorbed and focused when you're not engaged in specific practice, you won't have to deal with any of the potential negative ramifications, or far less. That said, if you like to keep stuff open, have fun. So, the use of the mirror as a tool, what can it be used for? Before we get into that, let's look at the ways in which you might load the mirror. So there's two ways, for the most part, right, that Barden looks at. And those are where you invite the energy you're going to bring into the mirror from the universe, or where you bring it from the universe through yourself into the mirror. One goes through you, one bypasses you and goes directly into the mirror. If you're going to do work with yourself, then there's always the potential that you go through yourself into the mirror. And if you're going to be working on others, you don't go through yourself, and instead you go straight from the universe into the mirror. Now, most people will tend to bridge these a little bit. It's very difficult to actually make that separation because many of us will use ourselves, our physical, tangible perceptions, as feedback, right? As a feedback mechanism that lets us know that we're running the energy and that it's flowing through. And there is certainly some value in this. However, there is a stage where the more you can step back from needing to use your own body as a barometer, the easier that flow will be. Often the use of the body as a barometer for the expression of energy can create a stagnation, right? Will create an internal barrier so that we can feel the energy more strongly, right? It is resistance that allows us to have the perception of strength. So this means that as we move away from passing the energy through ourselves, we might not feel our own resistance to the energy, and it might not feel very strong at all. So this means our mechanisms of feedback, or our expressions of success in what we're doing might not be reflected through such an obvious coarse representative as the body. So this is why we need to develop a strong relationship to more subtle frames of reference, to more subtle forms of energy than just the body's reflection of the frequency. Okay, so developing your awareness of energy and more refined understandings of that awareness of energy is definitely a high value part of the practice, right? This allows us to look at, well, how is this frequency that we're working with expressing itself and coming into manifestation through the world? Of course, you have the coarse, like we just mentioned, the coarse nature of the physical body. There might be stuff that starts to happen in the astral field around you, and this can be a very complex topic, so we'll just keep it somewhat simple in using the emotional reference to the astral body, okay, the astral energies and frequencies. Then you would have, of course, the manifestation on the mental plane and the frequencies of mind, and then how that extends and how this shows up starts to become a little bit less obvious in the sense of super physical tangibility. It becomes apparent in the types of people you might meet, in the types of knowledge you find yourself encountering, what crosses your path. So there's these synchronicities that start to unfold in more and more subtle realms of expression. If we lock into and just clamp our jaw into one mechanism or one density of feedback that allows us a perception of success, well, then we are missing out on everything that is not that one thing. Okay, so these are just a few very, very clunky examples, but this is all very, very refined as you go on and on and on, okay? So, that said, a mirror can be used very similarly to an amulet or a talisman in the sense that you load the mirror with the energy you want to work with. Okay, so what Barden mentions, because it's an initiation text, so the main energies you're working with are vital, right, are astral, and he breaks that, of course, into earth, water, fire, and air, the akasha, and light. So vital, earth, water, fire, air, akasha, and light. These are the 7 substances, right? The 4 elements being to the astral, typically the way he would work it. So 7 is a lot more than 1, okay? But it's also a lot less than infinity. So you start somewhere. And for many of us, just becoming familiar and comfortable with these gradations can take some time, because there's these differences in feeling quality and perceptual quality, and then there's this whole spectrum of moving beyond the physical body's reflection of the energy, because for a very long time we tend to relate to the energy, we understand it, we perceive it as our perceptions of it, and all perceptions are merely points of resistance to the thing, right, to the energy itself. Example being, even in the visible spectrum of light, you look at a tree, you see the green color coming back at you, right? What's coming back at you is everything that was not absorbed through that substance. It's the light that's being reflected back. It is the resistance of that substance to the light that has created that reflection and that observation, that perception of the color. And this seems to be true in all of the sense gates and how we perceive, okay? So, vital, earth, water, air, fire, Akasha, light. The 7 main frequencies that you use in initiation into Hermetics. So now, of course, we are talking about the magic mirror. So how might you use it? Varden gives a number of examples here. And again, these are just beginning examples. These are just a finger. Oh, hey, you could go in this direction. There's a lot of paths you can take in that direction. Okay? So I'm just going to read through a quick list here. One of the first example is you can use the mirror in any case which requires optical exercises, right, where you make use of your imagination. So you can use the mirror as a means of outsourcing, once again separating yourself from the internal processes, and this can serve some very interesting functions, right, because you end up allowing your perceptions to exist. This is wacky, but like outside of your own habitual egoistic references of your normal self. Okay, so that can be used as a tool in that way. Whenever you are, number 2, any instance when you're loading or charging fluids, energies, or powers, etc. So you can do that once again into the mirror. A gateway to planes, spheres, etc. that you might want to visit. Again, you have this separation. This is the key thing with the mirror. So it seems is that it allows a sense of separation from the task at hand. And the value and safety in that can be very strong. Okay, as a means of communication with essentially like FaceTime, right? Old school FaceTime with living or departed humans here, as what it mentions. So the easiest way to work that one in terms of getting success would be with a friend who is also on the path, who also has decent skills, and then you can, of course, engage in the meditation and experience, and then afterwards hop on a call and talk about what you experienced, see where the crossovers are and what kinds of success you might have had there. All right, as a means of making contact with forces and entities, so basic evocation or invocation type of work. As a means of an instrument of emanation to impregnate rooms or treat the sick. So many amulets, fountains, wells, etc. can be used in this way as well. People will use water is very common for this type of purpose too. So like an amulet, you would charge the mirror up, and then it would reflect or radiate or emanate the energy that you want it to. So let's say you have a healing practice, you load that mirror with harmony, equanimity, balance in electric and magnetic forces, etc., etc., everything with the full depths of your understanding of where health can come from, or backing support for health, and you load all this light and energy, goodwill into the mirror, and then it would reflect out from the space that you work in. So that's pretty valuable because it can take some of the onus off you to always be in that space. Let's say, again, you have a healing practice every day before you start your work. You load the mirror, or you load an amulet, you load the room. If you're loading a mirror, it will reflect out and impregnate the room, empower the room with that energy, so that you don't have to always be in the depths of that space that you're working with. And there is, once again, value in that it can allow for some small degradation in your focus, your ability to sustain the full alignment with what you're doing. When you do laps, there is this potential there to sustain the energy and sustain the intention. Okay? So, the next one here is to influence yourself or others. That would be quite obvious. Transmitter and receiver, communication, any dimension, any spectrum that you're working with, any realm would be in there. Okay? Defense, an instrument of defense, warding off harmful, undesirable influences. So this would be You could also look at this as an instrument of alchemy, of a transmutation and transformation of energies that might be coming in. And of course, wards and protective types of energetic expression. And there's a number of different ways you can work that as well. Okay, only a couple more here. An instrument of projection. Okay, so anything that you are wanting to, say, manifest in your life, you could use the mirror as a means of seeing that, envisioning that, and then allowing the reflection of that to sort of inundate your subconscious through the use of the mirror. Okay, that would be the same as the first one, sort of a sensory exercise that's using the mirror. Okay, a lot of these are just repeats. The last one is as a means to explore past, present, and future. So, once again, there you have just some basics, okay? The mirror is just a tool. All of the energetic substance that you play with from a meditative day-to-day scenario, everything you're working on can be done in the absence of the mirror. But it does serve a nice purpose of separating you from the practice, which could be the exact opposite of what you want. And if you are not using a tool that allows for or is encouraging of a subconscious separation, it can be of a lot of value to really, really consider how you enter a practice, how you introduce yourself to the practice and open a space, and then how you close it after. Okay, so there's value in really taking that into consideration. Many of us, as we progress on the path, we are often always in a degree of practice and meditation and connection and unification and surrender and all this stuff, in resonance with different frequencies and et cetera, and because it becomes a part of your day-to-day experience, when we go to do a specific practice where you're, okay, I'm gonna sit down and go real deep, often we don't really consider opening it as much as we might have in the beginning, or closing it as much as we might have in the beginning. So please explore that, because there can be a lot of really good things in that opening and closing, which doesn't mean that when you close or when you aren't in that specific practice that you are in any way performing the practice of the meditation to a lesser degree, right? Your day-to-day experience and the way this stuff fuses into your moment-by-moment interactions with life, this is all constantly elevating, okay? But still very, very valuable to specific practice. Boom. Open it with intention, open it with a sense of sacredness, close it with a sense of sacredness and through flow, okay? So, each of these examples that Barden gives with the use of the magic mirror, they all start to cross over a little bit, okay? And I find that the first portion, which is to load each individual substance into the mirror, there's a lot of value in that. Right? So build up a bunch of vital energy and spend time loading it into the mirror with the type of intention you might want. Okay, allowing that light of that vital energy to reflect the energy and that information back out at you or into the room. Okay, load it, and maybe you spend, this is an interesting one, maybe you spend a month really loading, every day the same thing into the mirror, and you set aside an hour to do that, you'll start to build some really interesting stuff, right? You'll really start to notice it. Maybe you load it with Akasha every day. Maybe you load it with the fire element every day, or the water element, etc. And you'll start to get a handle on what's happening. Okay, the other option is you load it, you use it for the practice, and let's say you want to use it for something else, now you have to dissolve what you loaded into the mirror, or out of the mirror. And so that is why if you're going to use the mirror for the same thing, you can load it every day with the same spectrum of what you're working with and the same energetic substrate, and then that quality, that information that you're working with, that energy will all start to build and build and build and accumulate on itself and spin through itself, okay? So I found that a lot of this stuff you look at in evocation as well. Some of the most valuable ones, of course, the initial loading, because it lets you understand how to build a substance. And did I take my bookmark out? Nope. My favorite one would be the mirror as a gateway to all desired planes, because this works a lot with the evocation. All of the planetary, spheric magic, constellational magic, and everything, the earth as well, everything that has to do with invo and evocation. This is a really, really interesting tool for that. So what he suggests, we'll just go through this one because it's a nice one, is load the mirror with the Akasha, right? With the Akasha, and you can absorb it into the body, right? From the universe through pore breathing, and then out of your body into the mirror. Okay, now you can do this a billion different ways. He mentions two, through the hands or through the solar plexus. He likes those two. The hands are a really obvious expression, a transmitter of energy. The solar plexus a little bit less obvious, but once you get used to using that, it's fairly easy. And then anything goes once you develop enough familiarity and skill with the energy and how you use mind and body to work with this stuff, okay? So you load it with Akasha, and then from there you step through the mirror. There's a bunch of step-by-step ways of working this, but you load it with Akasha. It's timeless and spaceless. You load yourself, or you essentially separate the mental body, right? It steps through the Akasha, and there you go. And then you're off to the races. Through the Akasha, this gives you the potential to work through the astral planes, or to really go anywhere, to enter anywhere. So this is such a very, very valuable one. The use of the mirror can dissipate some of the potential health hazards of working with the Akasha, because once again, you're not loading yourself so much with a bunch of the Akasha. It's passed through you into the mirror. You separate the mental body or the spirit, if you're using that to refer to the mental body, and there you go, off through the mirror. Okay. When you aren't using the mirror, you have to be a little more cognizant of closing the practice, as we already mentioned. So this is a really fun one, because then you can start using the Akasha and the mirror to get a whole spiritual milieu of through flow. When you start moving beyond the astral planes to higher vibrational spheres, and you start connecting with higher consciousness and entity, and light starts to pour through, and the mental body becomes changed, it becomes inundated. That spirit that has passed through the mirror comes into resonance with higher frequency. It passes back through the mirror at the end and enters you, and facilitates the potential unification with that higher resonance through the astral and through the physical bodies. So there's, of course, again, ways of doing this, many without the mirror, but the mirror offers that nice separation. Okay? So you can go through this, you can look through all the different variations of exercises and come up with your own. These are just initial suggestions. I don't typically use the mirror. I work through some other means. You might really enjoy the use of the mirror though. You can set a space aside, it's a little darker, and you can really make a nice practice out of it. Okay, so the main thing, if we're going to review the use of the magic mirror, use of the mirror as a spiritual tool, is that it separates the practicer from the practice, and then the residual effects of the practice can come back in through the closing out of the ceremony, okay, in a very balanced and harmonized way. And I find that this is the biggest value of the mirror, is that it allows for sacredness of practice, moving away back to your day-to-day experience. Okay, so that's just a brief introduction to the use of the magic mirror with Franz Barden's book here. If you're interested in training Hermetic alchemy with me, I have a retreat coming up, a 16-day spiritual attunement retreat, June 2025. There's also courses available on the website in both Tai Chi as well as Qi Gong, Hermetic alchemy, and meditation. Those are two separate courses. There is a Q&A reference library that comes with both courses, so any questions you might have on the material, you just shoot an email and I'll throw up a video response for you as soon as I'm able. And lastly, private coaching. I offer online private lessons and private coaching. Those are 2-hour sessions. If you are interested in that, please shoot me a note as well. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for your time. Practice. Bye.